Captain Juan Park stood at the observation deck of the diplomatic station, watching Earth grow smaller as the ship headed toward the meeting point. Her palms were sweaty inside her crisp uniform gloves. After 20 years in Earth's defense force, she never imagined she would be humanity's first official contact with alien life. 5 minutes until we reach the rendezvous coordinates, said Lieutenant Hyun Kim from the navigation console. Juan nodded. Is the communication system ready? Yes, Captain. All translation protocols are in place. The vast emptiness of space suddenly changed as a massive ship appeared. It seemed to fold into existence from nowhere, its surface gleaming with colors humans had no names for. The vessel was at least 5 times larger than Earth's largest spacecraft. They're hailing us, Hyun said, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. The main screen activated, revealing a tall, slender being with silver-blue skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. The alien spoke, and moments later the translation followed. I am Ambassador Vorex of the Kelveri Dominion. We welcome Earth to the galactic community. Over the next weeks, meetings continued on the neutral space station positioned between Earth and Mars. The Kelveri seemed peaceful and advanced. They spoke of trade, cultural exchange, and protection from other, more hostile species in the galaxy. Your planet has much potential, Vorex told Juan during their 4th meeting. With our guidance, humans could join us among the stars within a generation. Something about the way Vorex said potential made Juan uneasy. It reminded her of how colonial powers on Earth had once spoken about developing nations they intended to exploit. When Juan shared her concerns with Earth's united government, they dismissed her worries. You're being paranoid, Captain Park, said Director Nan Wuhan during their secure video call. The technological benefits alone make this alliance invaluable. The Kelveri have offered us faster-than-light travel. Do you understand what that means for humanity? I understand, sir, but their interest in our mineral resources seems. Captain, your job is to maintain diplomatic relations, not question this opportunity. The call ended, leaving Juan frustrated. That night, she could not sleep. She paced her quarters on the station, then decided to review the treaty documents again. As she read through the complex agreements, she noticed subtle clauses that gave the Kelveri access to Earth's resources with minimal compensation. 3 days later, Juan sat across from Vorex, finalizing details of the treaty. There are several points that need clarification, she said, pushing forward her notes. Vorex's upper eyes narrowed slightly. Your species tends to overcomplicate matters. These are standard agreements. Standard for whom? Juan asked. Before Vorex could respond, Lieutenant Hyun burst into the room without knocking, her face pale. Captain, emergency transmission from Mars colony. The wall screen activated. The peaceful Mars colony, home to 50,000 people, was under attack. Kelveri ships, different from the diplomatic vessels they had seen, fired energy weapons at the dome habitats. The thin Martian atmosphere offered no protection as structures cracked open, exposing civilians to the deadly environment. What is the meaning of this? Juan demanded, turning to Vorex. The alien's expression did not change. Your Mars colony sits upon the richest deposit of crystalline minerals in your system. We require immediate access. There are families there, children. Juan shouted as the screen showed people running in panic. You were warned that the galaxy is not a peaceful place, Vorex said calmly. Consider this your first lesson. Juan's personal communicator beeped. The message was short. Taehyun and family confirmed in Dome 3. Her brother, his wife, and their 2 children had moved to Mars just 3 months ago. Dome 3 was now a shattered ruin on the screen. You broke all rules of warfare, she said, her voice shaking with rage. You attacked without declaration, targeted civilians. Rules of warfare apply between equals, Vorex interrupted. Your Earth government will surrender within 12 hours, or we will target your major cities next. Within hours, Earth's leaders capitulated, unwilling to risk more civilian deaths against an enemy with overwhelmingly superior technology. As Juwan watched the official surrender broadcast from her quarters, now under guard, her communicator secretly vibrated with an encrypted message. Protocol Nemesis activated. Maintain position. Await instructions. She deleted the message immediately, but for the first time since the attack, she felt something besides grief. The Kelveri thought they understood humans based on their brief observations. They thought humans would accept defeat. They were wrong. 3 months after the surrender, Captain Juwan Park no longer wore a uniform. Dressed in simple civilian clothes, she walked through the crowded market in what was once downtown Seoul. Kelveri patrol ships hummed overhead, their purple lights scanning the crowds. Fresh vegetables, grown right here on Earth. Called a vendor as Juwan approached his stand. She selected a few items and paid. As the vendor handed over her bag, he slipped a small data chip into her palm. Juwan didn't react, simply tucking the chip into her pocket and continuing her walk. 2 blocks later, she entered an old bookstore. The elderly shopkeeper nodded as she browsed the shelves. When no other customers were present, he pressed a hidden switch. A section of the wall slid open, revealing a narrow staircase. Underground, the Resistance headquarters buzzed with quiet activity. What had once been part of Seoul's old subway system now housed Earth's best hope. Captain, greeted Professor Minho Kang as Juwan entered the main chamber. The former university professor now led the technical division of the Resistance. We've made progress. She handed him the data chip. From our friend at the market, Kelveri patrol schedules for the next month. Minho inserted the chip into a secure terminal. Perfect. This matches what we've observed. They never change their patterns. That's their weakness, Juwan said. They think in straight lines. In another section of the vast underground complex, Lieutenant Sung-Ho Yoon was training civilians to fight. They moved quietly, learning to strike vulnerable points on a Kelveri body model. They're fast, but they turn slowly, Sung-Ho explained to his students. Their spine doesn't flex like ours. Use that. Juwan watched for a moment before continuing to the research lab. There, Minho and his team of scientists worked on reverse engineering Kelveri technology. Show me, she said. Minho led her to a workbench where a disassembled Kelveri communication device lay in organized parts. We discovered something interesting. Their neural systems operate on a frequency humans can't naturally perceive, but they're extremely sensitive to it. Can we use that against them? We're developing a device that can emit pulses at their frequency. It won't harm them physically, but it will disorient them completely. Juwan smiled for the first time in days. That's exactly what we need. Later that night, Juwan met with the full leadership of the Resistance. Representatives from cells across the globe joined via secure holographic links. The Kelveri think we're beaten, she told them. They've settled into predictable routines. They patrol the same routes at the same times. They believe we lack the technology to challenge them. We do lack their technology, said Gina, who led the European cell. But we understand them better than they understand us, Juwan replied. Professor Minho's team has discovered the Kelveri have no concept of guerrilla warfare. Their entire civilization evolved with formal, announced conflicts with clear rules. So they don't expect us to break the rules, Sung-Ho added. Exactly. And we've learned more. Juwan activated a display showing Kelveri physiological data. They have superior strength and technology, but they have weaknesses. Their hierarchical structure means they can't make decisions without approval from superiors. Their soldiers become confused without direct orders. For the next hour, they developed plans. Small strikes first, targeting communication relays, then disrupting supply lines, always avoiding direct confrontation with Kelveri forces. As the meeting concluded, a young communications specialist named Jisoo rushed in. Captain, I intercepted something important. The room fell silent as Jisoo played the recorded transmission. It was a Kelveri commander speaking to his superior. "The humans appear subdued, but something troubles me. They're too quiet. In other conquests, there were at least some direct attacks from resistance fighters. These humans, they watch us. They collect our discarded technology. I request additional surveillance resources." The response came quickly. "Request denied. Humans are a primitive species. Their brief expansion to Mars gave us concern, but they clearly lack the will to fight superior forces. Maintain standard occupation protocols." When the recording ended, Juwan looked around the room. "They think we lack the will to fight. That's the biggest mistake they could make," Sumbo said quietly. "Yes," Juwan agreed. "Their technology makes them strong, but their assumptions make them vulnerable. They broke the rules when they attacked our civilians. Now we'll show them why that was their greatest error." As the resistance leaders dispersed, Juwan studied the map of Kelveri patrol routes. In 2 days, they would launch their first coordinated strike. Not with overwhelming force, but with precision and surprise. The Kelveri expected humans to be predictable. They were about to learn how adaptable humans could be. Kelveri Commander Doru woke suddenly, his 4 eyes snapping open in the darkness of his private quarters. Something had disturbed his sleep. He sat up, listening carefully. There was nothing, just the usual hum of the base's systems. Then he heard it, a whisper just at the edge of his hearing. "We see what you did on Mars." Doru jumped to his feet, activating his weapon. "Who's there?" he demanded. No response came. The room was empty. He checked the security systems. No breaches, no unauthorized entry. Yet he had clearly heard a voice. It was the 3rd such incident this week. Among the Kelveri occupation forces, similar reports were spreading. Strange sounds in empty rooms. Equipment that worked perfectly during inspections would fail during critical operations. Security cameras would briefly show human figures that disappeared when guards investigated. At the morning briefing, Doru noticed his officers looked tired, their silver-blue skin dulled with stress. "Report," he ordered. "Sir, 3 more communication relays went offline during the night," said his second-in-command. Technicians found no physical damage, but the programming was corrupted. And the supply transport. Delayed again. The guidance system malfunctioned. It landed 200 kilometers from the designated area. Doru's upper eyes narrowed. These incidents are increasing. Meanwhile, deep beneath the city, Juwan watched the live feed from tiny cameras placed throughout the Kelveri base. Professor Minho sat beside her, monitoring the effects of their latest operation. "The sound devices are working perfectly," he said. "The frequency is just at the threshold of Kelveri hearing, subtle enough to make them question whether they actually heard anything." "And the psychological impact?" Juwan asked. "Better than expected. Their society has no concept of ghost stories or supernatural phenomena. They have no framework for processing unexplained events." Jisoo entered the control room with fresh data. "The disruptions to their supply lines have created shortages at 3 major bases, and our agents report increasing tensions between commanders." Juwan nodded with satisfaction. "Begin Phase 2. That night, every Kelveri soldier on Earth experienced the same dream, a vivid nightmare showing Mars colony being destroyed, but from the victim's perspective. They felt the terror of the humans as the air rushed out, as children cried for help that wouldn't come. The Kelveri had no concept of shared dreams. Their species didn't naturally experience nightmares. The effect was devastating. "How is this possible?" demanded Supreme Regional Commander Vorex, the same alien who had overseen the initial diplomatic deception. Now, 6 months into the occupation, his confidence was fading. "You will find the source of these psychological attacks." But there was nothing to find. Professor Minho's team had developed a device that emitted signals matching Kelveri brain patterns during sleep. No technology was planted on their bases. The signals came from kilometers away, passing through walls as easily as radio waves. As dawn broke, Every screen in every Kelveri facility simultaneously displayed the same message for exactly 3 seconds before returning to normal. We know your fears. We are everywhere. No human resistance fighter had physically entered any Kelveri base. The message was delivered through a temporary override of their display systems, using code patterns Minho's team had deciphered from studying discarded Kelveri devices. By midday, Kelveri troops were shooting at shadows. 3 units fired on each other after mistaking routine movements for human infiltrators. In her command center, Jiwan received updates from resistance cells worldwide. Similar operations were unfolding on every continent. The Bangkok cell reports Kelveri forces have abandoned 2 outposts. Jisoo said, "They're consolidating at their main base." "Perfect," Jiwan replied. "That makes Phase 3 easier." Phase 3 began with selective targeting of individual Kelveri officers. The highest-ranking ones would find personal messages in their private quarters. Objects moved from where they had been placed. Food that tasted strange but showed no contamination when tested. Commander Doru finally broke after finding his personal identification code written on his bathroom mirror from the inside of the glass. "Request immediate transfer off-planet," he sent to High Command. "Unknown human weapon affecting psychological stability of all personnel." The response was immediate. "Request denied. No evidence of widespread psychological warfare. Control your troops." But that night, when thousands of tiny drones, each no bigger than an insect, swarmed their barracks, flashing lights that triggered vertigo in Kelveri physiology, even High Command had to acknowledge something unusual was happening. In the Resistance headquarters, Sungho delivered more captured Kelveri weapons to Minho's team. "Their patrols are getting sloppy," he reported. "They travel in larger groups now, looking over their shoulders constantly." Jiwan studied the map showing Kelveri force deployments. The occupation troops were consolidating, abandoning smaller outposts to gather at defensible locations, exactly as she had planned. They came expecting to find primitive humans who would either fight directly or submit completely, she said. "They never imagined we would fight like this, not with their kind of weapons, but with fear itself." As night fell again, the Resistance prepared their next message to the invaders, not a whisper this time, but a clear declaration that would be understood across the stars. Jiwan stared at the alien standing before her in the underground command center. The being was unlike any creature she had seen before, with copper-colored skin that seemed to shimmer in the dim light and large, expressive eyes set in a face that was almost, but not quite, human. "My name is Nara," the alien said through a translation device. "I represent the Talon people. We have been watching your resistance against the Kelveri with great interest." Sungho kept his weapon trained on the visitor. "How did you find this location? How do we know you're not working with the Kelveri?" Nara's mouth curved into what appeared to be a smile. "If I served the Kelveri, they would already be here. I found you because we've been monitoring their communications. Their frustration with your resistance has become quite obvious." Professor Minho studied the alien's technology with obvious curiosity. "Your translation device is more advanced than anything we've reverse-engineered. The Kelveri conquered my world 20 cycles ago," Nara explained. "We have learned much about their technology through necessity, just as you are doing." Jiwan stepped forward. "Why come to us now?" "Because you are succeeding where all others have failed. The Kelveri have subjugated 17 species across this sector of the galaxy. None have resisted as effectively as humans." She activated a small projector that displayed a galactic map. Several star systems glowed with a red light. "These are all worlds under Kelveri control. They follow the same pattern everywhere: diplomatic contact, sudden attack on outlying colonies, then full invasion when the species surrenders." Jiwan's eyes narrowed. "We aren't the first." "No, but you may be the last they attempt to conquer." Nara's large eyes blinked slowly. 4 other species have begun their own resistance movements, inspired by Earth's example. We wish to coordinate our efforts. Over the next few days, Juwan met with representatives from each alien resistance through secure holographic communications that Nara helped establish. There were the Eskai, insectoid beings whose world was rich in rare minerals. The Ladon, aquatic creatures whose ocean planet had been partially drained by Kelveri mining operations. The Kur, a species of brilliant engineers whose technology had been stolen. And the Vosh, physically imposing warriors who had been specifically targeted for their combat abilities. The Kelveri keep us isolated from each other, explained Turo, the Vosh commander, his scaled face serious on the holographic display. They fear what would happen if the conquered worlds united. They were right to fear it, Juwan replied. With Minho's technical team working alongside alien engineers, they developed a secure communication network spanning multiple star systems. For the first time, the subjugated species could coordinate their actions. The Kelveri weakness is their rigid thinking, Juwan explained during a strategy session. They can't adapt quickly to new situations. If we all strike simultaneously in different ways, their command structure will collapse. Each species brought unique knowledge to the alliance. The Eskai understood Kelveri biology better than anyone, having been forced to work in their medical facilities. The Ladon had mapped every Kelveri supply route across 3 sectors. The Kir provided technical knowledge that helped Earth scientists make a breakthrough with their most ambitious weapon. The neural disruptor is ready, Minho announced 2 weeks after Nara's arrival. He displayed a small device containing billions of microscopic machines. These nanites will target Kelveri neural pathways specifically. They will temporarily disable their ability to give or receive orders without causing permanent harm. No permanent harm? Sungo questioned. After what they did to Mars. Juwan placed a hand on his shoulder. We fight to free ourselves, not to become like them. That's the difference between us. The coordinated assault began on what became known as Liberation Day. Across 12 star systems, resistance forces struck simultaneously. On Earth, humans deployed the neural disruptors at major Kelveri command centers. The effect was immediate. Confused Kelveri soldiers unable to receive new orders, their rigid hierarchy suddenly useless. In orbit, ships from the Vosh resistance, using technology provided by the Kur, disabled the Kelveri defense fleet before they could respond. On the main command channel, Supreme Regional Commander Vorex appeared, his silver-blue face showing an emotion humans had never seen on a Kelveri before. Fear. What is happening? He demanded. How are you coordinating these attacks? You thought conquered species would remain isolated and compliant, Juwan replied calmly. You were wrong. We learned from each other. We united. Impossible, Vorex whispered. No species has ever. Humans are particularly good diplomats. Juwan interrupted with a cold smile. The skill you dismissed as irrelevant when you betrayed our trust. Within 48 hours, Kelveri forces across Earth had surrendered. Similar victories were reported from other worlds in the Alliance. For the first time in centuries, the Kelveri Dominion faced a serious threat to their empire. As Juwan watched Kelveri ships retreating from Earth orbit, Nara approached her. This is only the beginning, the Talon warned. The Supreme Commander will not accept this defeat. He will come with the main fleet. Juwan nodded. Then we'll be ready for him too. Supreme Commander Kaiser stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's Fist. His silver-blue skin had darkened with age and authority, and the 4 eyes that gave all Kelveri their superior vision were fixed on the holographic display of Earth. Such an insignificant planet, he said to his officers, yet it has caused the greatest disruption to the Dominion in 3 centuries. No commander had ever failed Kaiser before. That Vorex had been defeated by primitives was unthinkable. Now the rebellion had spread to multiple worlds, threatening the order the Kelveri had maintained for generations. We will make an example of Earth, Kaiser declared. No survivors. The armada of 200 warships moved toward the blue planet, their weapons charged. Kaiser expected no real resistance. The regional forces might have been overwhelmed by surprise tactics, but the main fleet was different, larger, stronger, more disciplined. What Kaiser didn't know was that 6 humans were already aboard his flagship. Juwan led the small team that had infiltrated using technology that combined Kelveri phase shifting with human stealth techniques. They moved through service corridors, placing small devices at key locations. "Control center secure," whispered Sungo through their communication link. "Ready when you are, Captain." Meanwhile, in Earth orbit, the Kelveri fleet found not a defenseless planet, but an organized defense force. Ships from 7 allied species had gathered, positioning themselves in a protective formation around Earth. "Amusing," Kazor said when he saw them. "They think these few ships can stop us." "Supreme Commander," called his sensor officer. "We're detecting movement from Earth's moon." From concealed bases on the lunar surface, vessels began to emerge. They were smaller than Kelveri ships, but faster and more maneuverable. Similar ships appeared from Mars orbit and the asteroid belt, Earth's hidden fleet, built in secret during the occupation using combined technology from all allied species. "Impossible," Kazor whispered. "This is Captain Juwan Park to all Earth and allied forces," came a transmission across all frequencies. "The Kelveri broke the rules of war when they murdered our civilians. Today they learn the consequences." The battle that followed shocked the Kelveri commanders. Human ships didn't fight according to any recognizable military doctrine. They used mining equipment as weapons. They deliberately sacrificed smaller vessels to disable larger ones after crews had evacuated. The allied species coordinated in ways the Kelveri had never seen, each using their unique abilities in concert with the others. On the flagship's bridge, alarms began to sound. "Multiple system failures," reported an officer. "Our communications with the fleet are being disrupted." "How?" demanded Kazor. At that moment, the bridge doors opened. Juwan entered with her team, weapons ready. "Your soldiers cannot help you," she said calmly. "The neural disruptors are affecting every Kelveri on this ship." Kazor reached for his weapon, but found his limbs responding slowly, his thoughts becoming confused. The nanites released throughout the ship's air system were targeting Kelveri neural pathways specifically. "You cannot defeat the Dominion," he managed to say. "We already have," Juwan replied. "Look." She gestured to the view screen where the Kelveri fleet was in disarray. Some ships retreated while others surrendered. The carefully arranged formation had collapsed completely. "Your empire was built on fear and deception," Juwan continued. "You broke the rules of war and expected no consequences because you believed yourselves superior." 3 days later, representatives from 27 species gathered on a neutral space station. Many had been enemies before the Kelveri threat united them. Now they signed the Galactic Compact, a new set of principles governing relations between worlds, with explicit protections for civilian populations. Supreme Commander Kazor and his senior officers faced trial for war crimes. The evidence was presented not with anger but with methodical precision. The tribunal, consisting of judges from multiple species, including reformed Kelveri, who had opposed the Empire's methods, delivered their verdict: guilty. The punishment was not death, as many expected, but something the Kelveri feared more: loss of status. The guilty would spend their lives helping rebuild the worlds they had damaged, working alongside those they had once considered inferior. 1 month after the final battle, Juwan stood at the Mars Memorial. The dome that had been destroyed in the first attack was rebuilt, stronger than before. A monument now stood where her brother's home had been, listing the names of all who died that day. "We won differently than they expected," said Professor Minho, who had come with her. "Not with superior strength, but with adaptability, cooperation, and mercy at the end." Juwan placed her hand on the cool stone of the memorial. "They broke the rules of war thinking there would be no consequences because they were stronger. But strength isn't just about weapons or numbers." Above them, ships from a dozen worlds moved peacefully through Mars orbit. Earth was no longer alone in the universe. no longer naive about the dangers of space, but it had kept the principles that ultimately saved it. They tried to make us like them, Juan said quietly. That was their final mistake.